The diner hummed with late-morning chatter, but all sound died when a sharp slap cracked across the air. A young waitress froze, her apron soaked with tears, humiliated in front of strangers. The billionaire's wife laughed, her diamonds catching the light, untouchable and cruel. Cameras flashed, capturing every humiliating moment, a silent witness to injustice. The diner was alive with the hum of conversation, clinking silverware, and the scent of fresh coffee curling through the air. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, dust motes dancing in the warmth, creating a scene that should have felt ordinary, safe. But in a single instant, ordinary shattered. A sharp slap rang out, cutting through chatter like a gunshot, a sudden crack of cruelty that froze everyone mid-bite, mid-sip, mid-breath. Rebecca's body went rigid. The tray in her hands shook, the coffee trembling as it threatened to spill over the edge. Her heart pounded against her ribcage, but the sound of her own pulse was drowned out by the echo of humiliation. The slap was more than pain. It was an announcement of power, of untouchable wealth crushing someone invisible. Her apron, once white and neat, was now damp with tears. A map of shame painted across her uniform, all around her. Strangers stared, mouths open, some shifting uncomfortably. Others holding their phones up, snapping pictures or recording video. Their digital lenses transforming a human moment into a viral spectacle. The billionaire's wife stood a step away, a perfect figure of disdain. Diamonds glittered on her fingers and neck, reflecting sunlight in cruel bursts. Every sparkle a silent reminder of privilege that lived in a different universe than Rebecca's. Rebecca wanted to shrink into the floor, to disappear beneath the linoleum tiles, but the diner didn't let her hide. Chairs scraped across the tile as the hum of murmurs began, whispers and stifled gasps spreading like wildfire. The waitress swallowed a sob, tasting the bitterness of injustice, of being visible only for the wrong reasons. She wanted to run, yet her legs felt cemented, trapped in a tableau of public shame. Her manager stepped forward, lips pressed in a tight line, unsure if he should intervene or let the scene play out. The cameras continued to flash, each click capturing a moment that would haunt her online, immortalizing humiliation. The laughter of the woman, rich, untouchable, cruel, cut through the air, echoing in Rebecca's chest long after the sound had faded. Time slowed. The air hung heavy, thick with injustice, each heartbeat amplified, each breath a labor. In that frozen moment, Rebecca realized the world would see her not as a person, but as a punchline, a viral clip to fuel someone else's amusement. Yet beneath the sting of shame, something flickered. Resilience. Something deep and stubborn whispered that this was not the end. And as the lights of the diner reflected off the wife's diamonds, Rebecca straightened her back, a silent promise forming in the quiet between heartbeats. This humiliation would not define her. The kitchen smelled of bleach and burnt toast, a sterile contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded in the diner. Rebecca pressed her palms against the cold stainless steel counter, the metal biting into her skin, grounding her in reality. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed softly, flickering ever so slightly, casting harsh shadows that stretched across the tile floor like silent witnesses. She took a shaky breath, each inhale tasting like metal and fear, each exhale trembling with unspoken words. Her hands hovered over the coffee pot, fingers curling around the handle as if it were a lifeline. The liquid inside sloshed with the tremors of her nerves, spilling over the edges in tiny droplets that hissed against the hot surface. Every pour became a ritual, a quiet attempt to reclaim control in a world that had just humiliated her for the amusement of strangers. In the solitude of the kitchen, her dignity felt fragile, like a paper boat caught in a storm. Memories surfaced unbidden. She saw herself as a little girl, sitting at the back of a crowded classroom, raising her hand only to be ignored. She remembered walking home past mansions she could never enter, the whispers of privilege brushing past her ears like a cold wind. She remembered nights when her stomach ached from hunger, her voice unheard, her presence invisible. All those years the world had taught her invisibility, and now it had thrown her into a public spotlight of shame. A single tear escaped, tracing the curve of her jaw, a delicate shard of vulnerability in a hardened moment. It caught the light from the flickering bulbs above, shimmering like a fragile promise that she would not break. Not yet. She closed her eyes, letting the heat of embarrassment mingle with a quiet ember of defiance. This was not just pain, it was a call to rise, to fight back in the only way she could. Her breath steadied. Slowly, deliberately, she lifted her chin, feeling the invisible weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. She whispered a vow to herself, barely audible, yet echoing in the empty kitchen. I will survive. I will not be defined by their cruelty. Every muscle in her body stiffened with newfound resolve. The tremor in her hands did not vanish, but it became a rhythm, a heartbeat of resilience rather than fear. Outside the kitchen door, laughter and camera clicks continued, a cruel reminder that life moved on without pause. But inside, Rebecca had carved a space of quiet strength, a sanctuary where dignity could grow, impervious to the mockery of the entitled. She took one last steadying breath, straightened her back fully, and let her eyes glint with determination, ready to face the world again. Night had fallen over the city, and the streets shimmered under pools of amber streetlight, wet from an earlier rain. In a quiet corner of a private club, Rebecca sat across a polished mahogany table, the surface reflecting the soft glow of overhead chandeliers. The air was heavy with tension, scented with expensive cologne and the faint metallic tang of urgency. She had left the diner hours ago, but the sting of public humiliation lingered, curling around her chest like smoke, threatening to suffocate resolve. The billionaire, Michael Carter, leaned forward, his suit crisp, eyes shadowed with the weight of unspoken truth. He didn't speak at first, letting silence fill the room, letting the gravity of the moment settle like dust on the table. Then, carefully, he slid a thick envelope toward her, the paper smooth, the corners sharp, almost daring her to open it. His gaze held hers, steady, unwavering. A silent promise that what lay inside could change everything. Rebecca's fingers trembled as they hovered over the envelope, the weight of possibility pressing against her nerves. Inside, she would find proof. Documents, numbers, names, evidence of a life built on deceit and fraud, of a glittering empire erected on lies while innocent people like her bore the brunt of cruelty. Her mind raced, flashing back to the diner, to the slap, to the smirks, to every moment where she had felt invisible, powerless, small. But now, power shifted, not with force, but with knowledge. She opened the envelope slowly, each paper a revelation, each line exposing a truth that had been hidden behind the sparkle of diamonds and designer handbags. Fraud, manipulation, lies that had been whispered only in the shadows, now laid bare in black ink and legal stamps. Her heartbeat raced, a mixture of fear and exhilaration, the same pulse that had made her tremble in the kitchen hours before. Courage welled inside her like a tide she could no longer restrain. In that instant, she understood. This was no longer just about her dignity, her humiliation. It was about justice. The world had laughed at her, but now the world would see the truth. A plan formed in her mind, precise and quiet, like a shadow. Moving across a wall, she would rise, not with anger, but with clarity and evidence, turning humiliation into power. Michael Carter gave her a small nod, a subtle encouragement, before rising from the table. "It's yours to decide," he said quietly, the words hanging in the space between them. She clenched the envelope to her chest, feeling the weight of responsibility, the surge of determination. No longer a victim, she was now the architect of revelation, a quiet force poised to expose what had been hidden for far too long. The gala was a glittering cathedral of wealth, chandeliers dripping like frozen waterfalls over tables draped in white linen, over glasses that reflected a world built on privilege. Laughter and polite chatter filled the hall, a soundtrack of elegance, until it fractured, splintered by the first camera flash. Rebecca stood near the doorway, her pulse steady, her chest lifted, eyes sharp as she watched the world she had been forced to serve now reveal its own cracks. The billionaire's wife, once untouchable, glided across the polished marble floor, her smile practiced, perfect, a mask hiding the fragile empire beneath. Then came the first revelation. Screens across the room flickered, documents, emails, and ledgers exposed in brilliant clarity. Fraud, manipulation, and embezzlement laid bare before the glittering audience, their gasps and murmurs filling the room like a rising tide. Every flash of the press captured the unraveling, immortalizing the collapse of arrogance and cruelty. For a moment, time paused. The wife's smile faltered, diamonds catching light that now mocked her. Her poise cracked as whispers spread, and the empire she had flaunted for years began to crumble in live broadcast. Rebecca's heart pounded, not in fear, but in a rhythm of quiet triumph. All the humiliation, every stolen moment of dignity, every suppressed voice that had gone unheard, now found resonance in the eyes of the world. She didn't cheer. She didn't gloat. Rebecca simply stepped forward, her shoulders squared, her uniform pressed and clean under the glow of the chandelier. She was a silhouette of resilience, a quiet force standing at the threshold of power and truth. Justice did not roar tonight. It shimmered quietly, a soft brilliance reflecting in the faces of those who had witnessed both cruelty and its exposure. In that silent shimmer, dignity reclaimed its place, unbroken and undeniable. Outside, the city blinked awake under a veil of night. Streetlights mirrored the sparkle of the chandeliers inside, yet softer, humbler, grounding her in the reality that victory does not need applause. Rebecca walked away from the gala, each step deliberate, carrying with her a story of courage and endurance. The wind tugged gently at her hair, the streets quiet around her, a contrast to the chaos of revelation she had left behind. Every shadow seemed to bow to her presence, every echo of footsteps marking a path forward. A life rewritten not by revenge, but by the moral weight of truth. Cameras, lights, and scandal had done their work. The world had witnessed justice, but it was hers to carry in a more intimate, lasting way. As she disappeared into the night, the city seemed to hold its breath, acknowledging the subtle power of someone who had endured, risen, and reclaimed her dignity. And as the night embraced her, Rebecca carried a quiet victory. Proof that courage, patience, and truth could turn humiliation into justice and shadows into light.